Chapter 1. Preliminary. In order that there may be no misunderstanding either on the part of the general reader or of possible atheistic critics, I desire to have it clearly understood at the outset that the theistic argument which follows will be based upon the facts of organic and mental evolution as stated by Darwin and his followers. Among the latter, I desire to make particular mention of the names of Haeckel and Romanes, of the former because 1. He was a follower of Darwin, 2. He was endorsed by Darwin in the later editions of his works, 3. He treated the subject of man's evolution more fully than did Darwin, and 4. Because he was more radically atheistic in his expressed conclusions than was Darwin himself. I mention Romanes for practically the same reasons. He was a follower and an intimate personal friend of Darwin, and his views at the time he wrote the works from which I have quoted were as pronouncedly atheistic as were those of either Darwin or Haeckel. Point 1. I am thus particular in segregating the facts stated by the evolutionary philosophers from their theories or hypotheses for the reason that I accept their facts and shall base my argument upon them. I also accept and shall insist upon the general theory that man is descended from the lower animals, that the potentials of manhood resided in the primordial cell, that all instincts, primary and secondary, are inherited as long as they are useful, and finally, that man is the summum bonum, so to speak, of all ancestral forms and faculties, the final goal of organic evolution. These are the principal and the valid claims of the evolutionists, and those claims I shall steadily insist upon. I shall also accept as valid their principal arguments in favor of the general theory of evolution. I shall lay great stress, for instance, upon the doctrine of heredity, and I shall particularly insist upon the entire validity of their analogical argument from the ontogeny of the germinal cell of man to the phylogeny of the primordial germ. As this argument is their stronghold, being absolutely invulnerable in itself, atheism could ask no greater concession than its acceptance by theism. It will thus be seen that I propose to accept, without qualification, all that is really fundamental in the theory of evolution, both of fact and of argument. I do so for two very good and sufficient reasons, namely, first, because they are right, and secondly, because they are exactly suited to my purpose. But when we come to the subsidiary hypotheses of those scientists, vastly different questions present themselves. For instance, the theory of natural selection cannot be received without some qualification, as I have already pointed out. I have also ventured to criticize other subsidiary theories of Mr. Darwin and his followers, and it is for this reason that I wish to remind the critical reader that the validity of the theistic argument which I am about to make will not rest upon the soundness of my position where I have taken issue with those eminent gentlemen on minor propositions. The point is that I expect to make my argument complete as a refutation of their atheistic conclusions without the necessity of employing other facts or other arguments than their own. This may sound paradoxical, but the intelligent reader will understand my meaning when I say that I shall simply take up their facts and their arguments at the point where they abruptly stop and beg the question at issue, and carry said facts and arguments to their legitimate and logical conclusion. I make these remarks at this time simply because I am aware of the propensity so often indulged by a certain class of agnostic philosophers to raise new or collateral issues when they fail to meet the real question. I wish therefore to direct the attention of such philosophers to the argument based upon their own data, and thus afford them the opportunity to wrestle with that, before they assume, a priori, that I am wrong because I differ with Darwin and his worshippers on collateral issues. It is not because I fear, or expect to escape, or wish to avoid criticism for venturing to entertain views of my own in regard to those issues, that I have made these remarks. It is simply because I desire the reader to distinguish carefully between those arguments that are founded upon my dicta or hypotheses and those founded upon the facts and arguments furnished forth by my opponents. If that distinction is carefully borne in mind, it will be found that the theistic argument, per se, is complete without taking my own theories into account. But it must not be forgotten that it is one thing to prove theism, or the existence of an intelligent great first cause, as an independent proposition, and quite another to prove Christian theism, or the existence of the God of Christian faith, as distinguished from all other theistic hypotheses. The first, as I shall proceed to show in subsequent chapters of this book, is easily proven by the aid of the facts of organic evolution, as set forth by the atheistic evolutionists themselves. But Christian theism is not so easily proven, inductively, without the aid of the new psychology. Nor is the world at large very much interested in the first, for the great bulk of mankind believes in some form of theism. Even the agnostics are compelled to admit that the universe appears to be governed by some kind of intelligence, but hold that it can bear no relation to insignificant man, and that, whatever it is otherwise, it is utterly inscrutable to man. Christianity, on the other hand, teaches that we should seek God, if haply we might feel after him, and find him, though he is not far from each one of us, for in him we live, and move, and have our being, for we are also his offspring. When it follows that we may know something of one who is so near to every one of us, that he is not utterly inscrutable, that if we are his offspring, we may not only trace our pedigree back to him, but by an analysis of the mind nearest to him, and, continuing that analysis to the mind of man, we may know something of the attributes of him from whom we are descended. The world is interested in this form of theism, for it is of the last importance that it should know whether or not the religion which bears a causal relation to the greatest civilization on earth is founded upon a fundamental truth, and it looks to inductive science for a solution of the problem. It is this form of theism that it is the object of this book to examine, and this is why I have taken the pains to outline the fundamental principles of the new psychology and to correlate them with the facts of organic evolution. For if Christian theism is destined ever to be established by induction, it is obvious that it can be done only by a study of the facts and principles of these two sciences. And that is the reason why I have asked the reader to bear the distinction in mind. Theism is easily proven by the facts of organic evolution alone. Christian theism requires the aid of a true psychology. I have ventured to offer my own psychological hypotheses, for the reason that they seem to harmonize all the facts of organic and mental evolution with the essential principles of Christian theism. This the old psychology could not do, and the new physiological psychology does not touch the question. Under the old psychology, any possible conception of the attributes of God based upon the known powers of the mind of man could not escape the charge of the crassest anthropomorphism. I shall attempt to show that under the new psychology, as outlined in this book, the highest possible conception of the attributes and powers of the deity may be gained by an analysis of the known powers of the subjective mind of man.